Welcome to the African Weekly Roundup, a weekly program every Sunday here on HORUFADHI Media, where I discuss the latest news and events across the African continent. I'm Sultan Mohammed, your host and producer here on HORUFADHI Media. We hope you find this program very informative. Please like, share for similar content. Do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media. Also, do subscribe to HORUFADHI Media Group's second channel, known as HORUFADHI TV, where you are currently watching this program and where you can find other exclusive programs such as Behind the Scenes and Mahahisal, among others. And last but not least, do follow myself, Sultan Mohammed, Sulaiman Hashi, Yasin Abdi, and the wider HORUFADHI Media team on our social media platforms that should appear on the screen any moment. Let's get straight into the headlines. And we kick off in Equatorial Guinea, where elections held confirm Theodore Obiang's sixth term as president of the oil-rich nation. President Obiang has ruled the nation since August 1979, overseeing a regime that has now become notorious for crushing dissent and in constant fear of coups. The 80-year-old's 43 years in power are the longest of any leader alive in the world today, with the exceptions, of course, of monarchies. He seized power from Francisco Macias, who in 1968 had become Equatorial Guinea's first president upon independence from Spain, and who later declared himself president for life. Macias, Obiang's uncle, was executed by a firing squad only 2 months after Obiang's coup. Now, Obiang's opponents say that under his iron fist rule, the country has become the North Korea of Africa. Regime's ruthlessness is regularly condemned by rights watchdogs who have documented mass arbitrary arrests, dissidents held in nightmarish prison conditions, and frequent sweeps against suspected plotters. In a country where there is just a single authorized opposition party, Obiang exercises near total political control. In 2016, he was re-elected with 93.7% of the vote. This time, the official result gave him 94.9% on a turnout of 98%. So Obiang's son, who is largely considered to be the one to succeed, has ascended the ranks to the position of vice president today. In an interview ahead of the 2016 vote at the time, the elder Obiang, the father and the current president, told the French language newspaper Afrique magazine that this would be the last time he would run. Obiang graduated from military school while the country, as Spanish Guinea, was still under the rule of Spain's fascist dictator, General Francisco Franco. He then held a string of key jobs, including head of the notorious Black Beach prison, a place of living hell in the words of Amnesty International. His violent path to power has instilled a deep fear of coups and retaliation. His bodyguards comprise of soldiers who are members of his clan, but for additional security, he has had a close protection unit who are reportedly Israelis, Zimbabweans and Ugandans, who have also been brought in to help guard the presidential palace. Obiang says he has foiled at least 10 attempted coups and assassinations during his long spell in power, often blaming dissidents living in exile or foreign powers. The authorities closed the borders ahead of the election to thwart suspected plotters. Obiang has been buttressed by the discovery of oil in territorial waters in the mid-1990s. The bonanza has turned Equatorial Guinea into sub-Saharan Africa's third richest country in terms of per capita income, but the wealth is very unequally distributed. 4/5 of the population of 1.4 million live below the poverty threshold according to World Bank figures for 2006, the latest available data. The country has a long-established reputation internationally for graft, ranking 172 out of 180 nations on Transparency International 2021 Corruption Perception Index. Now, moving on to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the nation said it will hold presidential parliamentary elections on December 20th, 2023, kicking off a year of complex preparations in the vast Central African nation, large parts of which are overrun by military and militia violence. Announcing the date at a ceremony in Kinshasa on Saturday, the electoral body CENI outlined several challenges, including the logistics of transporting ballot materials thousands of miles, health concerns about Ebola and COVID-19, and unrest that has forced hundreds of thousands to flee their homes in eastern Congo. But the government has pledged to stick to the timetable in a country of about 80 million people. It is not a question of negotiating with the constitutional deadlines, it's a question of us respecting them, consolidating our democracy, said the government spokesperson Patrick Muyaya. He said that the election will cost about $600 million, more than $450 million of which has already been budgeted. Election struggles are common in Congo. The last presidential poll, Congo's first democratic transition, was delayed by 2 years until it was finally held in December 2018. In that vote, President Felix took over from his long-standing predecessor Joseph Kabila. Candidates are expected to be announced on October next year, with final list due in November. Current president is expected to run again, and one likely challenger is Martin Fayulu, who claimed victory in a 2018 poll. The presidents are limited to 2 terms under Congolese law. Now, all of this comes at a time where the M23 rebel group on Friday said it wants to talk directly with the government after Congo's president and other African leaders signed a ceasefire deal aimed at stopping attacks by the militia. Now, the leaders of Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Angola met this week in Luanda to find a solution to the conflict in Eastern Congo, which has forced thousands to flee their homes. They signed an agreement saying that they would enforce a ceasefire from Friday and said regional troops would intervene against M23 if it did not withdraw from its positions. However, M23 was not part of the discussions and found out about the statement on social media, according to its spokesperson. "We thank the regional leaders for their efforts to find a peaceful solution to the current conflict," said M23 spokesperson Lawrence Kanyuka. "Give us direct negotiations with the government to resolve the root causes of the conflict that are producing all these wars here," he said. M23 leader Bertrand Bisimwa also issued a statement to the same effect. Now, Congo's government has ruled out negotiations with the M23 rebels, which it classifies as a terrorist group. Asked about this at a press briefing on Thursday, Foreign Minister Christopher Lutundula said, "It won't happen. I can assure you on behalf of the government and the President of the Republic." The M23 rebels said it had already declared a unilateral ceasefire in April and that it was Congo's army which is initiating all the attacks we've seen since then. However, fighting has continued since, and the M23 rebels have continuously captured several towns in eastern Congo. When it formed in 2012, the group was the latest in a series of ethnic Tutsi-led insurgencies to rise up against Congolese forces. It's pushed out of Congo in 2013 after seizing large swathes of territory, but has had major resurgences since, as particularly this year. Now, moving over to the island nation of Sao Tome and Principe, where authorities on the island thwarted a coup attempt overnight, the Prime Minister and West Africa's regional bloc said on Friday. The Gulf of Guinea's nation's military barracks came under attack shortly after midnight, Prime Minister Patrice told a press briefing aired on a private broadcaster radio Somos Todos Primos. "We were targeted by an attempted coup which began around 12:40 a.m. local time and was completed shortly after 6 a.m, he said. 4 attackers were neutralized and detained, and the National Assembly's ex-president Delphine Neves was arrested on Friday morning, said the Prime Minister. "Everything indicates that the coup had occurred under the command of some personalities," he said. A former soldier, Alicio Costa, has also been detained in relation to the coup. Now, the head of West Africa's main regional bloc, ECOWAS, Guinea-Bissau President Umaru Sissoko, condemned the coup attempt on Friday. "Sao Tome and Principe is a country considered a model of parliamentary democracy in Africa," he tweeted. The former Portuguese colony, located off the western equatorial coast of Central Africa, has been relatively stable since an attempted military coup against the government of President Frederic de Menezes in 2003. Now, coup leaders at the time said they tried to topple a regime due to widespread poverty. Now, staying in West Africa, in Nigeria, gunmen kidnapped at least 60 people in a remote community in northwestern Zamfara state, who are mostly women observing Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, birthday, residents said on Thursday in the latest wave of abductions to hit the state. Armed gangs are rife across the country's northwest, where they rob or kidnap for ransom, and violence has been increasing as thinly stretched security forces often fail to stop attacks. That has raised concerns about whether residents in the region will be able to vote in February's presidential poll to choose a successor to President Muhammadu Buhari, who is constitutionally barred from running again. 2 residents said gunmen on motorbikes arrived in the community with local government area on Wednesday evening and shot sporadically. They took mostly women who were observing Mawlid, a celebration of the Prophet's birthday, which is held between the end of September to the end of November in Nigeria's mainly northern Muslim states, residents said. The residents said 19 people were killed on Tuesday when gunmen attacked the Ryuji community in Zamfara's Zurmi local government area, which is adjacent to where the current kidnapping has taken place. And finally, to Ethiopia, where the UN says that aid deliveries in the Tigray region are not matching the needs of the stricken region. The United Nations Food Agency elaborated, even as ceasefire takes hold in the war-torn northern region. And the World Food Programme and its partners urgently need to access all parts of the region to deliver food and nutritional assistance to 2.3 million vulnerable people, the WFP said in a statement on Friday. Now, restoring aid deliveries to Tigray was key part of an agreement signed on November 2nd between the government and TPLF rebels to end a 2-year war that has killed untold numbers of people and unleashed a humanitarian crisis in northern Ethiopia. Now, the WFP said all 4 road corridors into Tigray had been reopened by the government since the ceasefire, and humanitarian flights were flying into main cities, allowing a significant increase in aid supplies to the region. However, it added that access into some parts of eastern and central zones of Tigray remained constrained, affecting up to 170,000 mothers and children in need of food assistance. Aid into the region ground to a halt in late August when fighting resumed between the Ethiopian government forces and Tigray or TPLF rebel fighters. Now, since November 15th, when road access improved, the WFP said nearly 100 trucks had transported roughly 2,400 metric tons of food and 100,000 litres of fuel into the region. Humanitarian flights carrying passengers to Mekelle, the regional capital, have resumed for the first time since August after receiving government approval. Now, aid charters into Shire, a northern city, also commenced for the first time ever. And that's the top stories on our program today. Please tune in next week for the top headlines of the African continent.